Hello, friends. Welcome to the next episode of the After Hours Lounge. I'm unbelievably honored and humbled with my guest this week. He is so far the only guest I have had, but hopefully not the last one, to have voiced a surfing penguin in one of my favorite childhood films, Surf's Up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be joined by Mr. Selema Masekela. Selema, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. That's a great intro that brings back a lot of memories. Surf's Up was an incredible film, but an even more incredible experience to be a part of, like all the way down to like even how I got to do that with Kelly Slater and Rob Machado. And yeah, it's a trip.
Yeah, I was going to say, I tried to find your scene on YouTube because I don't have a copy of it anymore or anything. But I couldn't find it, but I think I remember you, Kelly, and Rob Machado on the beach as penguins, just chatting.
It was crazy. You know, I had a friend who was working on the movie as a consultant. Yeah. And he worked at Quicksilver at the time, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to Sony to go and check out some renderings, some drawings for this surf movie they're doing called Surf's Up." And I was like, "That sounds cool. Do you want to come with me?" I said, "Yeah." So I went, and next thing you know, we're in the halls of this incredible animation room with all these artists and animators, and they're talking about the details of where they want to go into the surfing, and they're just showing us like computer renderings of how it might move. And I was like, "Oh, this might actually be good." Yeah. And what was really funny is that they started talking about the plot and talking about how Cody, the lead, was going to be on this quest to be a pro surfer, and that there was a contest. And so I was sitting there just quiet as the guest of my friend, and I was like, "So is there going to be an announcer?" And they're like, yeah, definitely. I said, "Well, listen, I don't know how much you guys are aware of, but it's really important that you get the announcer right, because that's everything at a surf contest." And they're like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Also, I kind of happen to be that guy."
Yeah.
And I think they were a little perplexed that I'm here. I am in telling them that I'm like, "Well, listen, don't let a bunch of yahoos audition for this. Like, I'm gonna be that guy." And I just kept on nagging them, and then finally they let me come in and read for it, and I crushed it. And they ended up, it was only supposed to be like 2 pages, one scene. Yeah. And they ended up writing it. I ended up getting like 11, 12 pages in the script, which was huge, and it ended up being a big focal point of the movie. And still can't believe I got to be in a movie with Kelly Slater, Rob Machado, and Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jeff, Big Z, mate, Big Z.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, no, it was a weird. I saw that film before I started surfing. Water sports as a whole. Really, I didn't start till I was 18, but I remember watching that, and I think it was a big thing. I was like, "No, this looks like a lot of fun," and all this. It
was cool because they really went out of their way to tell a genuine story about surfing. And traditionally in Hollywood, like, you get nervous when you hear that Hollywood's making a surf movie. You're like, "Oh, they're just gonna make us look so kooky yet again." And that was what I loved about the team there. They said, "We want this to be a love note to surfing."
Yeah.
And that's what it was. And I get letters all the time, or these days, like, DMs and stuff from people with their kids, and they're like, "My kids started surfing because of Surf's Up." Which is cool. Never thought that I get to be a part of something like that.
That's epic. And the soundtrack is, I still listen to it today. I still have the soundtrack on when I'm working. It's epic.
That's so good, man. That's really good.
It's cool. So, I mean, I'm obviously very aware of your work, but tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, other than being a penguin in Surf's Up, kind of who you are and what you get up to.
I'm a Virgo. I am a surfer, a snowboarder, and skateboarder. And I have, for the last 22 years, been a television host, sportscaster, play-by-play announcer, particularly in the realm of the action sports space. So I was the host of the ESPN X Games for 13 years, as well as lead commentator for skateboarding and snowboarding, which was a blast.
Yeah.
I presently host a series for Red Bull called the Red Bull Signature Series, which I think you get over there across the pond. I have been doing a lot of more like documentary style journalism over the decade, really, like getting the opportunity to go out and do storytelling where it can give people a glimpse at people and places through the lens of sports. Started with the World Cup of soccer in South Africa, doing a documentary with my father there. My dad, who's over my right shoulder here, may he rest in peace, who was an incredible musician and activist from South Africa, who was a political exile of South Africa for 30 years during apartheid. And since we did that together, I've gotten to do a lot of great work with Vice. I had a series that I executive produced called Vice World of Sports, as well as some work with National Geographic. So it's crazy because surfing and snowboarding and skateboarding is what got me into television, you know, as the sports were starting to explode really in the mid 90s. There weren't, and they started to put the sport on mainstream television. They didn't have, you know, accomplished broadcasters like professional broadcasters who knew about the sports. So they went into our community and looked for people like myself who can't shut up, know a thing or two about the sports. And then I got a paid education in how to be a journalist and a host, and how to do play-by-play amongst the best in the world. And for me, it's always just been about curiosity. You know, it's about having enough curiosity to want to engage in the best storytelling possible. So whether that's storytelling what's happening in an event as an athlete who's trained all year, is putting down the run of his life, or, you know, going out into the field to learn more about how different cultures work and people and places, and what, you know, how sport affects a culture, or how a culture affects sport. Or the way I interact even at a political level. Those are all great things that I just can't believe that that's what I've gotten to do on this journey. As well as I make music. Music was always my first love. I have a band called Alakazam, which is my last name backwards. Masekela is Alakazam. And yes, I write and I sing and have a couple of albums out, and that's kind of it's my baby passion.
Yeah. The side hustle. So
yeah. I never thought it would be I never thought it would actually amount to anything that people would care about. I just thought, like, I want to make music. I come from music. That was my first love before surfing. And I just thought, well, I want to start making some music and put it out there, just so I can get this out of my chest, you know? And then, you know, wonder how people are going to respond to it. And in the last like decade, I've gotten a chance to have music in a bunch of shows and movies, and it still blows me away when I go look at Spotify to see how we're doing, and like, whoa, look at that, you know, that song just has over 1 million plays in the last like 8 months or something. And it really, it's another form of storytelling, really, for me, making music.
Definitely. I think one of those things, and you kind of said it at the start there, like what's potentially made you so successful is having that, you had that authenticity and the passion for the things that you loved already, and then that's translated into you talking about them, you know, whether it is, you know, surfing, music, all that stuff. And often what I found as I'm getting older, you find the things that people have started that they didn't think were going to be big, they just started it because they loved it. They're always the things that become really big, you know?
That is 100% the case. None of these things that I do today were ever like, that's my career.
Yeah.
I'm going to be that and it's going to make money. It was like, I don't want to get a real job. I've gotten fired from so many real jobs. How can I stay as close to skateboarding, surfing, and snowboarding as possible? This is what gives me life. And before I got involved in the industry, I worked every job under the sun. You know, I did construction.
Yeah.
I cleaned houses and washed windows, and you know, I was a janitor. I would clean car dealerships at night, and office buildings at night, and then just play through, surf all morning, and then go home and sleep and do it all again at night. And I thought at the time I had the best job in the world because I got to surf all day, while everyone else was, you know, at real jobs. And you know, I worked at banks, I waited tables, I was a bartender, I did all those things. And my friends were starting to come home from college with like jobs and money and like getting wives and stuff. And
Yeah.
I was really confused with what their lives were. And the thing that I think I found most in common with with the majority of them was that they didn't do the shit that they loved doing 3, 4, 5 years ago anymore. They thought it was kind of silly that I still wanted to surf and go snowboard as much as I did. And they thought it was something that you did on the weekends or annually for holiday. And I was like, nah, this is how we live. Don't you remember? And my parents were definitely frustrated with me, like, especially when I was around like 22, 23, and I still got nothing, you know. I'm living in a studio apartment with a little hot plate, no television, 2 surfboards, and happy as can be, no car, whatever, and like working a bunch of different jobs, but being able to like hustle enough to live my life the best I could, like in a way that brought me joy. And ironically, it was getting a job as a receptionist, answering the telephone at Transworld Skateboarding and Snowboarding magazine, where I finally found a community of people who worked really hard, had careers, and were like smart and talented and professional, but they were all there for the same reason, because they wanted to stay as close to and participate in the thing that had helped shaped who they were as people, which was this lifestyle of action sports.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something I say on the podcast a lot of the time. And I think you obviously found it quite early in your life as well. As I said, I started windsurfing when I was 18. And I think a lot of people do go through these lives. They either have a passion when they're younger, or they go through life and they never find that passion. And I think irregardless of how much money you earn or how big your house is, all this stuff, you are going to end up leaving this world feeling a bit empty if you don't feel like you've devoted your time to something, like a craft, whatever it is, whether it's building Lego, playing snooker, you know, surfing, anything, but something that you can devote a few hours a week to and just get lost in, I think is a piece of magic in this world that a lot of people don't have.
If you can find something that you love so much that you don't have to check your phone, then you've won.
Yeah.
That might be crushing 2 or 3 books a week for some people. They're like, if they just went out and climbed the mountain, right? Like it makes them feel alive to dance in story and to consume information and learn and get perspectives from all these billions of different ways that like people experience life. Whatever it is that can take you out of like being on the clock of life, right? Anything that like takes time, and even the smallest bits of time, but like stretches it out so that you can remember moments like they're bigger pieces of time. Music, art, whatever it is, sometimes even sitting and doing nothing, like sitting in meditation, like by yourself, like I learned all sorts of things about myself now as I've learned how to actually sit still and just be and turn a little bit more inward. Those are the things that that make me feel the most alive. And like you said, like there is no amount of money or possessions or any of those things that are, it's going to give you that. It might facilitate your ability to do the things more, but it's not going to give you the thing.
That's it. You know, I remember because I spent years as a windsurfing instructor in Greece and in Egypt and all this. And we'd have people coming out on holiday that were clearly very successful because they could afford to come out on the holidays and stuff. And they come out and they'd go, oh, well, you know, I do this for 2 weeks a year. You teach me. And then we come back again the next year and I spend the first week relearning what I learned last year and stuff. And it's, you know, they're all wishing they could be like us. And I'm getting paid nothing and, you know, barely, I can just about afford to drink beers every night, you know, and they're jealous of us. And as soon as I realized that, I was like, you know, actually I am richer than them in a certain way, you know?
Yeah, I would call it wealth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, good word.
It's true. I'm pretty sure that when you expire, as you're exiting into whatever the nexus is, you're not going to be sitting there being like, oh, I have so much money in the bank. Or who's going to get my house or whatever. Like, you're going to be thinking, I think you're going to be thinking about how you made people feel, how they made you feel, and what are the things that you did that made you feel the most alive. Like, that's it. That's your stock market. That's like that's the investment that you want. I believe you want to be full of when you exit.
For sure. I mean, like, you know, for you as an example, I know you're a very, very keen surfer and things. Like, I imagine surely your top 3 waves will hopefully be the last things you think about, you know. It's like that. They must rank high.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, I was up this morning at 5:45 and, you know, made my coffee and selected what boards to put in the car and drove down to the beach as the sun was rising and there was mist over these little marshlands on the way. And I was so excited.
Yeah.
Like no expectation of what the experience was going to be once I got in the water, because I had a moment this morning. I was like, oh, this is actually such a big part of the thing, like being able to have this time just on the way, you know, to anticipating the thing. And yes, I did get a wave this morning that was just like, my first wave was actually one where I was like, maybe I just go in. Like, it's not going to get any better than that. I really thought about it. It was such a good wave, and it was so long. It was a right-hand point wave that I had to get out, walk back up, and go out around the jetty that I had paddled out at. And I was so proud of myself as I was doing it too. I was like, yeah, that's going to be a long paddle back. Let's take the victory lap. And people were on the beach, and they were like, hey, we saw that wave. I was like, yes. Every once in a while, this shit comes together, you know. And that energy from that wave today literally is like what I carry and bring into this conversation with you and the rest of what I have to do today. Like, that literally is the spark. It's the fuel for my day. And so I try to get that in whatever sort of small way that I can, and when I get to experience it at a larger level.
Yeah, definitely. I can say as well. I mean, we don't get where I am in the UK, we don't get surf that much. But couple of weeks ago, we were down in Cornwall, and me and my girlfriend's a teacher, so we're restricted by her holiday time. So we were down there and we surfed. Yeah, first thing every morning surfed, and I'm like, I'm done for the day. I'm literally
great.
Done.
Yeah, you're good. You don't need that much. It just needs to be quality.
Yeah.
The quality of experience. Some of my best days are when the waves are most shit, actually. Yeah. You know, those are some of the funnest days, and they prepare you for the days when it's really, really good. And you're like, who am I going to blow off today?
Yeah. I think that's an expectation thing as well, isn't it? You know, when the conditions are pumping, you're like, oh, you know, you get a bit stressed, and I guess you take that into life as well, can't you? You know, you go, oh, I need to do well, I need to perform. Whereas if the conditions are a bit subpar, you can be like, well, I'll just take whatever I can get. And if you get a good one, you're like, well, that's a bonus, you know?
You know, it's funny. I went to do a job. I got an incredible job that I got to do for Atlas Obscura. They make these really great travel books, and I was doing something for them and with another brand, and it was a big deal. Like, it's one of those things where like, oh wow, I can't believe I booked this gig, and you know they're compensating me in a very good way.
Yeah.
Like I forgot for a time that this is what I do for a living. And before I went on stage, it was a virtual event, you know, COVID friendly, what have you. I was like in my head, I was like, man, dude, I gotta do. And so we went and did a little rehearsal. And after the first rehearsal, the monologue, I walked off the stage and I just started chuckling. I was like, you sounded like you never did this before. Like, doesn't matter how they're compensating you or that it's this big of a playing field. They picked you because this is what you do. So just have some fun. And I went back up there and I just like, with no expectation, like you said, and just went off. I just went in all these different directions. And afterwards they're like, oh my God, thank you. That was amazing. Da, 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 da. We don't need to do it again. And I just started chuckling. I was like, yeah, just remember, like, this is what you love to do. And no one else is going to define what it is but you.
Yeah. It goes back to the authenticity thing we were talking about, doesn't it? As long as you're going to be authentic and be Selema, then that's what they want. That's what they paid for, you know?
Any time in my life that I have tried to be like, ooh, I should try to be a little bit more like this person because they're killing it, it is blown up in my face.
Yeah.
It's like even like with your style, like when you're surfing, right? Like if you try to adapt someone else's style, you look like a really confused, awkward version of yourself. And your friends are like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
When you get out of your head and you just be and you find some flow, that's where the magic happens, when you get out of like expectation or trying to be anything.
Yeah. Other than yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. We've all got to realize we're never going to surf like Mikey February, don't we?
Yeah. So a friend of mine said to me like 6 months ago, I had posted a clip and of a couple of turns, and I tend to always be somewhat self-deprecating because I think it's hilarious that we post clips of ourselves. And I was like, I really enjoy being average at this thing. That I love so much. Like, I'm so grateful to surfing. And he hit me back and he's like, hey, that wave was sick. And those were two like top-notch turns. He said, do you know what your problem is? I said, what? You've been surfing around the best surfers on the planet for most of your life. And so you're confused at times at what the level is. Like, let that shit go because it's offensive to the rest of us. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize I was doing that. Thanks.
It's a nice place to be. Yeah. I mean, I've been the same, like, you know, traveled, like I was saying before we hit record, I've traveled to Cape Town and stuff, and we all windsurf on the same spot there. And like a couple of my best friends are, you know, top 20 in the world and stuff. And occasionally me and the other boys have to be like, boys, we're doing well. We don't need to keep watching them. Like we're doing
we're here.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
Yeah. You know, and it is a cliche, but in podcast past, you know, I did a podcast with another guy and we said that cliches are cliches for a reason. And Kelly Slater saying that the best surfer is the one having the most fun, like that couldn't be more true. You know, whatever you're doing, as long as you're having fun.
It's absolutely true. I mean, I watched someone ride a wave with style and grace and do little to nothing, and you just go, man, that would be so cool to look that cool doing the thing. It's a reminder that like you just have to be. Like, that's literally all you have to do is be.
Exactly. So I mean, you know, moving on a little bit, you know, as I said, I mentioned that I spent some time in Cape Town. Now, obviously, I don't want to talk about COVID because it's boring and we all talk about it far too much. But obviously, 2020 has been a very difficult year for many other reasons for, well, pretty much the whole world, with all the issues around race, specifically in America, but sparked all over the world, really. You know, especially here in the UK as well. I don't know if you saw, like, John Boyega, an actor. You know, he led a huge march through London. You know, all this stuff, and it was crazy to see. And I was saying before we hit record as well that for me, being white and Scottish, and I grew up in a tiny town in the Highlands of Scotland, it wasn't really exposed to me any kind of things like that. Obviously, you know, you're always aware of it, and you learn about it in school and all this, but I wasn't aware of it until I went to Cape Town on a windsurf trip, and we drove to the petrol station and we pulled up, and I was like, everyone working here is black. And they come up and they wash your windows and all this, and you give them a couple of rand and all this. And then we'd go out for dinner at a nice restaurant, and I'm in there and I'm like, everyone in here is white. And then we go to the shops, and I'd go into the Ruka shop or the Volcom shop, and I'm like, everyone in here is white. And then we go to Burger King or KFC, and I'm like, everyone in here is black. And it was a strange thing. It kind of hit me. And I mean, I was 23, 24 at the time, so, you know, I wasn't young anymore, but certainly not old. And it did kind of catch me unawares for a few days. It took me a couple of weeks to really kind of be like, oh, this is how life is out here. You know, this is weird. And like the poverty there, and compared to the wealth you see, is insane. But that really struck me. So I was wondering if you could you know, discuss what your role has been over the last few months. And I know you know, as you said, your father's from South Africa. I don't think it's not Cape Town though, is it?
My dad was from Johannesburg.
Okay.
But we spent a lot of time in Cape Town. I have some family in Cape Town and actually all around South Africa. But yeah, I mean, my dad had to leave South Africa for his life in 1959 because the apartheid system was so insidious.
Yeah.
Like what you experienced was post-apartheid, but like the long trail of what that system was still very much exists, especially at a socioeconomic level. Things have gotten better.
Yeah.
But it has a long way to go. And the story that you tell is like being in a country where there's like 40 something million indigenous Black South Africans, and you know, less than a third of that in Afrikaner or European descent folks, and you everywhere you go where there's money, you saw people in servitude. And any time you were in a place where there was sort of like, you know, what we would consider jobs at the service rung, right? It was all Black people, and that's a product of apartheid. And in my dad's day, you know, it was literally like white and Black people being unable to interact. You know, the only time that a person like me would find themselves in your home would be if, you know, I worked for you. But we wouldn't sit together and bake bread. And if I was in your neighborhood even, a policeman could stop me and ask me for my passbook, essentially, which would be like a passport, to make sure that there was a reason that was signed off by someone that looked like you, dictating and affirming that I was supposed to be in your neighborhood and I was allowed to be in your neighborhood. And if that passbook wasn't in order, I could easily be thrown in jail. Yeah. You know, and that's just like such a cliff notes of what apartheid was. It was shitty. It was horrible in every way possible. And my dad left. My dad was a really talented musician. He didn't want to live that like that anymore. And he came to America. He started in London and came to America and went to music school here and was able to craft an incredible career where he influenced the world musically. And the one thing that he kept doing in the 30 years that he was unable to go home was continue to fight for apartheid to end. And he also, by default, found himself always standing on the side of and being an activist for disenfranchised people, especially people who were disenfranchised because of prejudice and race. So he came to America straight into the civil rights movement, Like he was like, I just left
I left
this shit, and now here I am. And my dad, he's like, well, you know, I'm an African. This isn't my fight, and I'm just here, you know, to make music. He could have done that, but he didn't. Like he said, all right, what do I need to know, and where do we go?
Yeah.
And so he immediately found himself in the fight, and people were so blown away. They were like, wow, you don't even have this history, but he identified, you know?
Yeah.
And so for me, to be able to grow up and have that example of someone who was outspoken, and for him, you know, you hear the phrase silence is violence.
Mm.
My father's idea of like, if you are silent about what you see and you don't speak up for those who are being disenfranchised, who are being oppressed, then you're participating. You are just as complicit as the people who are putting of violence. And when I say violence, that can be physical, it could be mental, emotional, it could be economical. Like you're just as complicit as those who are actually the architects of the violence.
Yeah.
And so I guess, you know, for me, it's something it's a subconscious thing. Like I have to speak on things when when it's apparent that that's what's called up for me.
Mm.
And one of the things that during this time, I know we're not going to talk about COVID, but one of the interesting things about this experience of COVID is that it forced us all, like we were cut off from so many of our distractions that we invent for ourselves all day. Like we are so spoiled, right? We could just have the ability to be as distracted as we want and into as many things as possible, go to any place we wanted to, etc. See whoever, whatever. I could get out, be like, you know what? I want to go to London tomorrow. Bing, gone. All that shit shut down, right? Our way of life changed. And so for the first time in a very long time, just as a society, a global society, we were all forced to pay attention to the same bit of things, especially if they were big and impactful.
Yeah.
And you know, the George Floyd execution in particular was something that no one had the ability to say that they missed. Yeah. Because they didn't have any other shit to do. So they were, not only were they watching, but they didn't have anything to run off to forget. Yeah. And so people had to sit with it. And you know, the fact that it was 8 minutes and 46 seconds long, and there was no question of what happened. It forced people to, for many people, it was the first time that they actually got the awareness after years and years and years of these things happening. For many people, it was the first time they got the awareness that, like, oh, these people do get treated differently. And differently is so the wrong word, right? Yeah, it's treated in an abhorrently unjust manner by the people who we pay to serve and protect us. And so I think what it did, it was such a powerful moment that it resonated through the entirety of our fabric in America, where any place where racism has been tolerated, has been hiding, has been indifferent, suddenly it was like a black light. We're going to look at all of it. And for us as a people, as Black people, for me in my spaces, that was a moment where I was like, yeah, we're going to talk about it here. Surfing, snowboarding, where I've been one of the few people of note that look like me, that have a voice within the platform, and also seen and experienced the myriad ways in which these communities, by way of privilege and a lot of times naivete and ignorance, have put up a wall towards others to participate. especially at a race level. I've experienced all types of racism in surfing as well as, and those experiences, people go to do these things to forget the world, right? It's where you go to like to be free as possible from the shit in the world, and there is so much shit outside of the conversation of race. But for me, in order to go to do the thing that I love, to leave everything behind, I also had to like have this thing that I had to deal with and navigate because of people's ignorance. So I had to be that much better. I had to prove that I belong in the space. And a lot of times people made me feel like, hey, you're a different kind of black guy because you're more like us, not like them. Sure, yeah. You're welcome. We'll allow you to participate. Not like this is just as much yours as it is mine, but this idea of allowance, or you're different because you've navigated your way up to my level. Well, I'd be like, the only reason why there aren't a bunch of people who look like me doing this is because people who look like you have done a very good job constructing barriers, both visible and invisible, to keep it that way. That's the only reason why it's that way. And now more than ever, I've just felt the need to speak on it. Not to speak on it to point fingers and accuse people,
of course,
but to speak on it so that this can be a big momentum period to start to help these industries to see the necessity and the benefit of inclusion, of how much this landscape gets to grow and the way it gets to grow if it includes different people from different ways of life. Bringing their flavor to it. You mentioned Michael February before.
Yeah.
How long it took for a Black South African to get on tour.
Yeah.
If surfing was allowed for Black people during the 40 years of apartheid, do you know how many? There would have been a shit ton of Black people.
Yeah, they'd have all been there. Yeah.
Like there would have been all sorts of South Africans and Africans in general.
Yeah.
But literally, like, Black South Africans couldn't go to beaches where the whites went to. And those beaches, 9 times out of 10, were the ones that were actually protected with shark nets.
Yeah.
And because of like the beautiful structure of wealth disparity and poverty, like the idea of a Black South African being able to even afford a surfboard and then go to a place, etc., like fantasy land, it wouldn't exist, you know? And it's the same thing here. People don't realize that, like, you know, here in America, in the last 50 years, 60 years, like when Black people tried to go to certain beaches, that people would call the police, and then the police would come in droves, literally with dogs in the water to drive them away from these safe spaces of privilege. Imagine deciding that like wading in the ocean is something that you're going to be like, no, that's for us.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not for us. You could do it over there where it's not nice, but not here amongst us. Yeah. The ocean. Yeah. The fucking ocean. That's how absurd and wild like the construct of racism is. So I've just been doing what I can to help raise awareness and speak on things, and I have a foundation called Stoked. We really give the opportunity for kids that would normally not have the opportunity because of the things that I mentioned to be able to get access and get in the water and skate and snowboard and have their lives informed by the lifestyle and open themselves up to new opportunities and new choices. And I've also been really pleased with what I've seen as not sort of token service or like, how do we get people like Selema to shut up? Yeah. But people, especially in the industry and brands, who realize like, wow, we've been complicit, and we also realize like what this will do for our brands and how this will improve the landscape, and that we'll make more money if we open this thing up to other people. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, think about this from a financial standpoint within your business. Look at the landscape and see the different manners in which being inclusive inside your company, as well as like how you're marketing to people, find a way to be able to make that make sense within your books. Because this is a capitalist fucking society. And I would be much rather, I'm way happier when people realize like, oh, this makes sense for us to make money to do the right thing. If that's what it's going to take for it to become a natural part of your culture to do the right thing, knock yourselves out by any means necessary. I'm always happy when people are earnest about it, and they just want to do it. But also if they're like scared that they're not going to make money because the landscape is changing, sweet, here's how you do it.
Yeah. I guess it's just it must just be a worry that it's just going to be a case of, as you said, like ticking boxes, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, we've done this, you know?
Yeah, and I don't want it to be ticking boxes. You know, I want people to realize like, this makes sense. This is as right as any of the other things that you pride yourself that made your brand what it is today. So do you want to make your brand better? So here's a really easy, low-hanging fruit by which you can do so. Because look, this America especially, like, we're a toddler. We literally, like, we're not even out of the playpen yet as a nation relative to the rest of the world. And you can literally see us right now as a country, like, with a dirty ass diaper.
Yeah.
Like, people are just like, oh, that poor child.
Yeah.
The diaper's like sagging and full, like it smells, and you're just like, is anyone gonna change this baby? Can't you see? And it looks like we're getting close, but
yeah, I was gonna say,
for a good portion of our country, there actually would be more satisfied to sit and stew in it rather than admit like we need to change so that we can grow and move forward. And that's sort of the interesting place that we find ourselves in. And one of the places, unfortunately, that it manifests itself is in race, because this is a country that was literally built on the backs of slaves.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Do you feel pressure, or is it one of those things, you know, you said this stuff was all sort of instilled by your father and things, but do you feel pressure to kind of be a sort of spokesperson for it and things, or is it just so ingrained in you know, in who you are already?
It's in my DNA, man.
Yeah.
It's in my DNA. I can't watch things take place that I don't agree with at the core of my being, and remain silent. It's unhealthy for me.
Yeah.
To do so. It's literally unhealthy. And listen, I mean, not everybody likes what I have to say. There are plenty of people within the action sports community that would much rather me be that cool guy that, like, he always tells me the rad stuff that's going on when I'm watching television, but like, oh, there he is talking about these things that I hate. I wish he'd shut up and just be that guy. Yeah. I get it all the time. People are in my DMs being like, you know, I've grown up watching you my whole life, man, and it just breaks my heart that, you know, you would just you talk about this stuff and politics, man. That's not what it's about. We're not racist in surfing. And okay,
cool, man. Yeah.
Well, it just kind of proved it. Yeah, cool. Whatever rocks your boat. But yeah, I mean, I like the direction overall that I've seen. More people willing to have the conversation and understanding that they need to learn, and that they need to participate. I think a lot of times people think that, like, it's the aggrieved parties that need to do the fixing. You see it across the landscape, right? You see it with gender issues, or, you know, with sexual identity. People assume that, like, they see the passion with which people are engage in activism, and they think that the activism from the people that have been wronged or find themselves on this side, like, I'm not trying to win anything, just want to be on the level. They think that that's where the fix is. That's not what fixes it. That just gets us to the point where everyone's paying attention. And then it's your responsibility to figure out what ways can I engage so that they don't have to go out and march in the streets anymore. So they don't have to fucking beg to be seen as equals, so that they don't have to worry about like walking outside of their homes because of how they look like or what gender they choose or who they choose to be with, and wonder whether or not they're going to make it back home because someone is just so incensed that they exist that they want to contemplate ending their life, or they want to make them feel so uncomfortable that they're going to traumatize them, you know, either overtly or with like constant jabs of microaggression that end up adding up to feeling like you got punched in the face anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember listening to another one of your podcasts and you told me about the checklist you run through before you get in a car. And that was so alien to me. Like, I've never, you know, I've seen it in films, and, you know, I've seen the videos on social media of, you know, people in the car, "Oh, I'm recording you," and the police, "Oh, you can't be," and all this. But you know, to hear you say that, you know, it was crazy, because like I said, it's just so far removed from the reality that I kind of grew up in. So you know, it was something that really resonated with me. I think it was the one you did on the lineup with David.
Yeah, with Dave Cronin. Yeah, a lot of people hit me up after that, and they're like, "I had no idea," and I was like, "Yeah, you think that because I'm well known or whatever, famous, that like suddenly like I'm not black anymore?" To I wish.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I've achieved such a level of notoriety and fame that is no longer an issue, and I move through the world every day.
Yeah.
Just, you know, become famous and you'll be fine. That's not the case. That's, you know, you went, like you said, I get in my car and I do a checklist. I make sure that my wallet is here and I don't have to go in my glove box for my registration. It's here. You know, when the policeman comes up, my phone is pointed and I have it on video. It's recording and I have my hands at 1 and 2.
Yeah.
You know, 9 and 3, and I answer everything this way. And unless the cop tells me to do it, I don't fucking do it. And the whole time I'm just like, I can't wait till this is over. I hope he doesn't walk back and ask me to get out of the car. When they go back and they run your thing and they come back and I'm just like, please don't ask me to get out of the car.
Yeah. Because
at that point, like, I don't know what that means. I've seen too many examples of what it could mean, and I've had too many experiences where the police have been actively trying to find a reason to search my vehicle or understand how this vehicle is mine, or why I'm even in the neighborhood where I am, etc. You know, and the only time that I've ever had to beg for my life in so far in this time that I've been on the earth has been in 2 instances, both at the hands of the police. That's the only time.
It's insane, isn't it? You know, you think they're there for another reason and things, don't you? You know, you think they're there.
Yeah. And I don't actually fault the people who choose to become policemen. I think there are a lot of people who grow up with this novel idea that, like, yeah, I'm going to make a difference.
Mm.
The culture of policing in America and what it's built on isn't about that. And a lot of people that become cops in our country go in with a great intention and then get worn into like this idea, like, oh, I'm in this club where we all do the same, or I'm the odd person out.
Yeah.
And they get worn down enough where now they think that it isn't us against them situation. And I have empathy for the fact that, like, yes, these people do put their lives at risk to do the job, but that's also what you signed up for.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, the idea of like making a person a heroine just because they took the job, be heroic in the manner in which you do your job. And I will honor you as a hero all day. But because you have a uniform on, that perhaps puts you in a position to feel like you can do anything you want and have this one interaction like could change your life. Like they have the power to change your life by the manner in which they are going to administer the law. And for many people during this time, the reason why Black people, for the majority of Black people in America, are so frustrated is because they just say, all we're saying is, can there be some level of accountability? Like, y'all are in the position to make me accountable for my actions. Who where's the accountability for this job that we call one of the highest in the land?
Yeah.
That we so instantly honor. Like, a little bit of accountability here to make it so that these guys can be so proud that if they see someone else acting up or that person, they feel that that's everything they can to eradicate them from doing that job. A job where being a shitty person can literally be like, I can change your life and I can end your life.
Yeah. I guess I don't know. I mean, I've listened to various bits about it, but as I said, like the police side of it is, I know it is quite bad in the UK as well, but it's so different because there are no guns here, so that makes a huge difference. A policeman can pull them over. And I mean, again, I'm speaking from a position of, non-informed, but I think that is one of those things. But by the sounds of it, it's you'd hope that they're just investing in training as well, and actually training these guys more, and mentally training as well, more than anything, of like how to, because not being stressed in these situations, and that's what may cause, they're worried, or they, and then before you know it, an action's happened that you can't take back.
Yeah. I do feel for a lot of these officers, because they're put in situations that they literally, like you said, they just weren't trained for, and don't have the patience for, especially when it comes to the idea of dealing with people who are experiencing real mental, emotional, psychotic battles. And if you don't have the training on how to talk someone down, or how to engage those type of people in a way that doesn't involve violence, the protocols that you're used to administering for a criminal could send a person who's dealing with a mental, emotional mania into some other thing that ends up escalating, and we see the results of what that is. So
yeah,
I hope that in my lifetime we start to see that type of training, and also like see the police be supported with people who don't carry guns, whose job it is literally to like be able to engage with and de-escalate. Like that's your job, is like to de-escalate, as opposed to like every time there's some shit popping off, send in literal like tanks to escalate situations. And you've already seen what happens in America when people take to the streets to exercise their rights to protest.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I guess, yeah, like you said, again, from a mental point of view, like so many people, especially at the moment with everything that's happening this year and things, like a lot of people are just one bad day away from something really bad. It's so easy to catch people at the wrong time at the moment. So, someone gets
especially especially now when people are struggling economically, and their families have been torn apart by these times. They've lost jobs, they've lost people, they've been sick, their lives have been turned upside down, and everyone's on edge and heightened. And I guess one of the things that I do try to do, with the platform that I have, is I try to connect with people at a heart level. I really do my best to connect with people at like a we're right here experiencing the same type things level. And
Mm.
when and I try to express myself in a way that people will understand that we so much more in common.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that people respond to that, and it makes it easy for me to just kind of be myself.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, kind of, leading on to, you on kind of social media and things. Another thing that I kind of wanted to chat to you about is your sort of, lack of like needing to feel like you should be Selema Masekela on your Instagram and things like that. Like, you're so kind of honest and transparent with your life, like whatever's going on and things. Is that Has that come from just a life of being in front of a camera, or is that, like you said, you literally just trying to connect with people, and like you said, show that we've got more in common than we do have things apart?
I grew up touring with my father from the time that I was young. And my dad would play these sold out shows and people would be screaming his name, and he he put audiences in a rapture with his music and his storytelling. And when he came off that stage and they met him, I always just remember how shocked they were at how he saw them eye to eye, and how he wanted to know about where they worked, or what was where they liked to eat, and what restaurant in town was great, and where their family was from, or you know how much he might know about the country they may have been from, because he studied their culture, etc. And it was like it was marvelous to watch. And I always thought, like, I want to be able to engage with people in that way. And so that's really where I got it. And my dad, what my dad did wasn't the definition of who he was. It was a part of him, but it wasn't the definition of him. And so I take the same approach. I happen to have a job where, like, I interact with millions of people at a given time. But once that camera's off, it doesn't give me any special powers.
Yeah.
I don't. It would be so much to walk around with that energy, so that anytime a stranger came up to me, I'd be like, "Hey, yeah," like, like if you have a friend who's a teacher, right? And they, came around with you to the pub and they just talked to you like you're one of their students the whole time. You're like, what? It's class is over. Like, relax. Just be, be yourself. And so that's really what I aim to do.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that I have respect for the people who make their social media like a job, and they are hyper curative about everything and all the edits. And I'm like, wow, that's cool, but it just looks exhausting to me. So
Yeah.
if I'm feeling like saying something from bed, you're gonna get me from bed.
Yeah. I think that's that, especially at the moment where, in 2020, but even in the lead up to that, I think that was starting to resonate with people so much more. Like, people don't want to see life through rose tinted glasses, curated and all this, because that's not what life is. Like, going back to what we said at the beginning of the podcast, people want to see people being their authentic selves,
Yeah. I feel bad for the influencer culture.
Yeah.
Like, people who, I'm lucky that I came up in television, and I came up with like a specific job and duty to deliver in this space as a journalist or commentator, whatever. And then, I happen to already have some notability when along came this social media platform that it gives you the ability now to build and work on your brand, when you were paying people to do that before, like to market you, so that, because the thing about what I do is like I'm constantly interviewing for a new job. Like each job that I'm doing is an interview for the next job.
Yeah.
And then in between time, it's like, hey guys, kind of still here. Give me a call. Okay, love you, mean it. It's a weird thing. So social media comes along and you're like, oh, what an interesting tool. I don't even know what to do with this. It feels a little self-serving. And it took me a long time to learn. For a guy who speaks to millions of people for a living, the idea of like now doing that naked essentially was strange. But then up comes like this next generation who harness it to actually build a brand, and then their entire brand is defined by people's relationship with them in the phone. I couldn't even begin to imagine what that might be like. And, you know, getting your angles right and filters and hey guys and all that stuff. Ooh. Because when they're out in the streets, the people really expect them to be that person that they have curated for the phone. And this other generation is like, what do you mean you're not on the clock? Like, take a selfie with me now, or I hate you, and I'm going to tell everyone online about how much I hate you. Like that's a level of you know, that would really mess with your psyche and being able to have that separation of who you are and what you do. And you see it with a lot of like young YouTubers and Instagram stars who, after a few years, they have to like pull the plug and go get their minds right and like build relationship with them, gain intimacy with themselves, and learn how to sort of recalibrate, because it's just been in this way. So I feel for them, and I've heard those stories, and I'm like, wow, that I couldn't imagine what that is. So I'm grateful that I've had this little bit of thing that I was doing before that allowed me to sort of like understand to respect the power of what you have in your hands as you put yourself out there via social media.
Yeah, I guess that's a great kind of a great way to look at it. You already had that experience in front of a camera, and then you can kind of just you've already got that audience. You just apply who you are already to that different medium. Whereas, like you said, trying to, you know, there's a reason Superman has a disguise. Like if he walked outside the building in his Superman suit every day, like that's exhausting to have.
Could you imagine every day he just walks out with the cape and the boots on? Ah! Like, he was, like you said, he was Clark Kent for a reason.
Yeah.
And for most of these people who have built their celebrity online, it's a man, I could, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't imagine looking at my number of followers, and if it goes down, being like, oh, money gone. I just lost money. To me, like, okay, cool. People follow, yes, and I'd like to curate an audience, but not at the expense of myself.
Yeah.
Not at the expense of like being able to be me. So I'm not for everybody as a result, but I'm really lucky that like the people who find me know that they can engage with me, and we can treat it like you're in my house. You know, and it's
treat it more like real life. You know, a lot of people forget that the word social is in front of social media. You know, it's for having conversations and chatting to people and meeting people, and it's great that it's used for businesses now. I mean, it's what I do for a job, and it's amazing. But I think a lot of people forget that aspect, that it's there to connect with people, not to look at a number go up and down and have heart palpitations because of it.
Yeah, I mean, and also not the place to like tell someone to fuck off just because you're unhappy with what they might have to say, or maybe you're jealous of them, or there's something going on in your life that makes you feel like, you know what, I'm just gonna put it out this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you saw me in the street, chances are
You
you ain't gonna say that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it can be such a toxic place, and it is such a shame. And I do think we're learning to live with it, and you know, but that another reason why I wanted to get you on is because the way, in my opinion, the way you are doing social media is the right way to do it. Of just like, here's me, I'm me, follow me if you want. If you don't, fuck off. You know, and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And
that's really, thank you. That's humbling, man. I appreciate it.
yeah,
My the social media people on my team would I'm going to tell them like, hey, I spoke to this really smart chap across the pond, and he says I'm good, so maybe stop asking me to do so much.
yeah, leave me alone. Yeah, no, it's a great way of doing it, and I think, you know, I do think, you know, in my personal circle, that they all treat their social medias like that, and I think it is a great way to do. And even brands and businesses, you know, you see, even, you know, I follow a lot of the surf brands and stuff, and they've kind of taken a bit of an approach as well of just being, you know, you can tell that there's a person behind that account and not a, you know, corporate stiff, you know, suited, you know, whatever. And I think that's a nicer way, and I think that's going to help people's mental health in the long run, of people realizing that there's actually a person on the other side of the screen.
Yeah. One of the other things I think that the COVID times have done, especially when it comes to that influencer set, is like now this like being paid to be places and just look cute is not a thing anymore.
Yeah, because they're not gonna.
And like being able to like make that your whole life, that people are like, wow, look at this person's life. It's like Wizard of Oz, like suddenly pull back the curtain and there's people who are like, my life is just kind of like yours, and I was really enjoying pretending living this high horse thing, but it was all a ruse. And so it feels like some sort of order is kind of restored from this whole, you look at your phone and be like, well, fuck, why did I even get out of bed this morning? Look, this person just, all they do is kill it 24/7, which is not real. People pay them to make it look like they kill it 24/7.
And that's so degrading for so many people's mental health, to see that, to comparing yourself is such a big problem. And I mean, I struggle with it myself as well, you know, like comparing yourself to other people, and why don't I look like that more? Why don't I have more hair on my head? Why am I not skinnier? You know, all this stuff. You know, it's really tough. And I think, yeah, the more people learn to be more themselves, and actually, you know, Selema is valuable as Selema, Sandy is valuable as Sandy, not trying to be someone else. And I think, like you said, that's the kind of the best way to go. But it's really difficult in this day and age with all the screens and distractions and people doing things.
The one thing that I say to people regularly when they ask me, like, what's your one piece of advice that you would give somebody aspiring to sort of make their dreams a reality, in whatever that might be, is nobody, absolutely no one has what you have to give. No one. How many billion people we have on the planet now? 8?
7 or 8, yeah.
7 or 8? None of them have what Sandy has. Yeah. You can line up all 8 fucking billion plus of them, and you'd be sitting there going, told y'all.
Not me, man.
One of one. And that's what makes us so incredible. And literally talked into abandoning ourselves to perhaps appeal to a bunch of people who to temporarily enjoy us until they find something else that's shiny and go after that is it's literally insane, and it breaks people's souls. It breaks the people who work so hard to strip themselves of themselves to become someone else and then they're left holding nothing. And we really got to be responsible for each other that way, because I don't think people realize like the human capital lost. As people strive for this idea of what they think fame might be, in a way that's far more that's literally in the palm of your hands.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like you said at the beginning, I imagine, I mean, for you, you know, I've chatted to a couple of reasonably famous. You're definitely the most famous person I've spoken to so far. But
well, you need to get to work then.
Yeah, damn. Yeah, do you know anyone? Yeah. So you know, I guess you're probably more stoked with those guys this morning on the beach who may, you know, they don't know you as Selema Masekela, but they're like, dude, I saw your wave, it was sick, than all the people at an event or whatever in the last few years running up, oh, Selema, Selema. Like, which of those interactions do you cherish more?
It's literally that person in the water.
Yeah, exactly.
That you paddle up to and you have a conversation in between waves, and they go off and you go off, and they never find out, or maybe they find out afterwards that what I do is what I do. I was paddling out this morning and we had to paddle out again, right, so that it sucks you out, but also not when a set's coming, because today was a little bit bigger, so that you don't get smashed into the rocks.
Yeah.
So I'm timing it, I'm jumping in the water, and there's another guy next to me, and he's yelling across to me as we're about to duck dive like a solid 5-foot wave. Hey, anybody ever tell you you look like that one guy? Duck dive, get washed down, come back up, paddling side by side. He's like, yeah, anyone ever tell you you look like that one guy? And I just go, yeah, all the time. And I just keep paddling.
Yeah.
So he goes, yeah, I get it. I understand why. So we paddle out, we're sitting and we're catching waves, and he paddles up to me. He's like, I know you. I fucking know you, man. He's like, I thought you looked like the guy, but then I heard you talking in the lineup. Like, no, that's him. He says, it's really cool that you didn't just say like, yeah, well, that's because he's me. He's like, I just thought to myself when I was paddling back out, like, you easily could have said that and you didn't. And thanks. Like, I appreciate you for that.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, no problem. Like, I said, you asked me a question and I literally gave you the answer to the specific question. If you asked if it was me, I would have said yes, but that's not what you asked. And we had a good laugh about it. So
yeah. No, it's funny. Like, you know, I've met a couple of like very famous people randomly in my life, and I always like to think I played it pretty cool, but it's such a strange thing. Even before chatting to you, I was kind of like nervous and stuff. But we just need to realize that, you know, it's just you're just a human at the end of the day, you know. I'm
still the worst when it comes to like really, really famous people.
Yeah.
Like, people always say to me, like on socials, because I'll tell a story about how I met a person, and they're like, "But they met you." I'm like, "No, just
yeah,
I do the thing all the time. I fan out for people that you know, I appreciate their work. I forget everything that I just said right here. I'm that person. I'm like, oh my god, what do I say, etc. And it's fun, I guess. You know, when you appreciate people,
yeah,
and you've connected with them, and then you get to meet them in real life, you hope that they're going to be those people that they give off.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be disappointed. I think that's more of what it is, at least for me. And so sometimes I'll just be like, you know what? I don't want to mess this up. I like to keep this image as is.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna acknowledge that they're here, but let's not ruin this.
Play it cool. Yeah, and you kind of like size, you know, you kind of sit there for a bit, don't you? And like size each other up, and you're like, I'm going to talk to you, and then they're obviously like, is this guy going to talk to me? And you know, yeah, like I met Jason Momoa at an airport in Brazil, and I shook hands with him with the wrong hand, and he was trying to get my phone. He was trying to get my phone to take a selfie, and I just put my hand in his hand, and I was like, oh no, you know. Yeah.
That's really, really, really funny.
Oh, it was cool, but like I said, you know, he was exactly who I wanted him to be. He was such a nice guy, and he laughed about it as well. And he was like, "No, bro, give me your phone." And I was like, "Oh, fuck, sorry," you know.
That's cool. I see him around town sometimes.
Oh, sick.
Or at least back in the day when you used to see people.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the moment. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was funny. It was really funny. So to finish up, then I know we're getting to the end of the time. I know you're a busy man. I usually do a few kind of quick fire questions at the end, but just before that, I wanted to ask you one of my quick fire questions. I haven't asked anyone else this question.
Oh shit.
Is Kelly Slater's wave pool as good as it looks?
Yes. Kelly Slater's wave pool is it's like taking a one-day trip to Indo.
Yeah.
It's like a boat trip that you go to in your car. For me, it's like 4 hours away from me.
Right.
And I've been 3 times. And each time is you drive out of there being like, get fucked. Did that really just take place? It's abnormal. And I'm not just saying that because he and Andy Irons are right over my shoulder. It really is the best.
I was going to say, I thought that was Kelly on the picture behind you.
Yeah, that's a photo from this documentary that we did with Andy Irons and Kelly Slater. It was the first time that they'd ever gone on. We got them to go on a surf trip together after years and years of their like heated hatred rivalry.
Yeah.
We did that trip together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember I was a kid and my favorite T-shirt for years, and I didn't realize what it was, but I had an Andy Irons with the Japanese rising sun logo billable.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
for years as a kid, it was just my favorite T-shirt. And like now thinking about it, I know like what that T-shirt was, and I'm like, oh, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
We miss him a lot. It was his 10-year anniversary of his passing earlier this month. Still seems like yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Is it Stab they're doing a documentary about it at the moment, or?
Yeah, there is one that exists, and this one comes from the perspective of Bruce and other characters, and there's apparently a lot of never before seen footage of Andy ripping really high level waves around the world. So I think people are excited about this idea of almost like an unreleased Andy video part in the midst of this storytelling. So yeah, one of one for sure.
I'm excited to see it. Oh, so finishing up then, 2 or 3 questions.
Sure.
Where is your happy place? Click your fingers right now. Where are you?
Oh man, click my fingers right now. I am in Nelson, British Columbia, sitting in a helicopter, making my way up to Baldface Lodge, spending a good week in the backcountry, riding fluffy Canadian powder. That's my happy place.
Nice. That sounds very, very refreshing and very, very peaceful at the same time.
Yeah, and it won't be happening this season. Unless I decide to go to Canada and quarantine for 2 weeks to go snowboarding. I mean, that's the reality of where we're at. Indeed. But grateful.
I've got a lot of friends waiting by the phone to know if they're going to be able to get to the Alps for the winter, and they're just all sitting there like, oh.
I just saw all this controversy about it, especially within Europe, where they're saying like certain resorts are saying unless you're a professional skier or a snowboarder.
What does that mean?
I'm like, what? I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because obviously, like, you're talking about a community of people who know how to hustle and figure out how to circumnavigate that. But I just thought that's just from a PR standpoint. Like, don't say it out loud.
That's so stupid, isn't it? Everyone's going to find a way to like get a sticker on their board and be like,
yeah,
it's all right, mate. I'm a pro.
Sponsored. Let me in.
Exactly. Obviously, we have spent a lot more time in the house this year. What have you been watching over lockdown? I'm a huge moviegoer. What movies, TV, what have you been consuming over the last few months?
I have been watching Succession.
Oh mate, it's so good, isn't it?
Give me the third season already.
I know, me too.
Man, I also have a huge crush on Shiv.
Do you?
Yeah.
Season 2 when she gets short hair, or season 1?
When she got both. When she got the haircut, I was like, oh.
Oh really? Yeah,
I
do see it.
Get haircut with the executive power suit, pantsuit.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I'm like, if I met the actress that plays Shiv in real life, I would be done. Like literally, I would be falling over myself.
Put a ring on.
But such a great show. All those characters. I mean, makes you. That show takes whatever dysfunction you have in your family, and just makes it look. You just want to go run and hug like the people you hate the most in your family. Like, I love you so much. Have I ever told you how great and normal we are, and compared to what this shit is? So yeah, I've been watching that. What else? I mean, I watched all the shitty stuff in the beginning of lockdown.
Yeah.
You know, I watched whatever the one with the tiger people.
Tiger King, yeah.
Tiger King, which was depressing, horrible. But Succession. Succession, and I really like the comedy on Netflix, Schitt's Creek.
Oh, I've not seen that yet.
Oh, Schitt's Creek is the best.
Is it? It's got thingy from American Pie, the dad from American Pie, isn't it?
Yeah, and his son plays his son and co-wrote it with him. And Schitt's Creek is pretty legendary. I highly suggest.
I'll put that on the list. I
also rewatched Lord of the Rings.
Oh mate, you can't. Yeah, I rewatched them in lockdown. Have you watched Ozark? I watched all of that in lockdown.
I haven't watched Ozark yet, but everyone says Ozark is one. There's just too much good shit now.
No, that's the problem.
And I'm always surprised that people find time. People are like, oh, we crushed such and such season 2 over the weekend. It's like, that's like 9 hours. Like, what? Yeah. Help me budget my life better, because on the weekend I'm just trying to catch up with the shit I didn't get to do during the week.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, Mandalorian.
Oh, dude. I'm wearing the Element Mandalorian t-shirt.
Oh, look at you. That's great.
I'm here. I watched episode 4 this morning.
So here's how weird I am. I'm starting the second season today because the idea of not being able to watch at least a few in a row was bad for me. So tonight, like, I have a whole setup of the manner in which I'm going to go and enjoy the 3 episods tonight. Like that's the date I'm going on with myself tonight. Yeah,
that's a good day. I've got a couple of friends doing that as well, but I just couldn't. I can't wait for it. And then finally, usually
I respect it.
Yeah. Usually I have a beer with the podcast. I do like drinking a few beers. I think it helps the conversation. Are you a beer man? And if so, what's the drink of choice?
I am a beer man. I particularly love a brand of beer called 10 Barrel. 10 Barrel. Out of 10 Barrel. They're out of Bend, Oregon.
Oh.
This really, really cool brewery. They happen to be a bunch of guys that snowboard and surf. They have an IPA called Cali Love that I love.
Yeah.
And you should have told me, because I would have cracked one open with you. Oh, next time.
Yeah, I didn't want to have one with you because I know it's the afternoon there for you, so I didn't.
Actually, it's kind of good because I do intend on doing the fitness this afternoon.
Yeah.
And if you had asked me to, I would have been like written off day, and then I would hate you afterwards.
Yeah. Would have been. Well, Mandalorian and beers doesn't sound too bad for later, mate.
Yeah, no, tonight it's on. Mandalorian and a couple of beers for sure.
Oh man, that sounds great. Cool. Well, we will finish up there. thank you so much, Selema, for coming to join.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me, and congrats on the podcast. Not easy what you're doing, and being consistent, etc. Take it from a guy who has a podcast. That's also something that we're doing today.
Nice.
When I'm done is editing and getting some stuff ready for the next episode.
Nice, mate. I'm excited. I listened to the one with Matty Matheson. I want to eat some of his burgers, man.
Oh, he's the best, man. He's coming soon.
Yeah, sounds epic. Cool. Well, thank you for listening, guys. If you have enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, all the usual. And I'm releasing this next week, so we're still in Movember. I am sporting a ridiculous moustache on my face, and I am running now 100 kilometers over the course of November for Movember. So please donate. I'm not far off my target, and that would be very much appreciated. And then I'll stop.
That's awesome.
But yeah, guys, thank you for listening, and we will see you for the next one.